March 15, 1932, 2:47 p.m. The Manhattan Savings and Trust boardroom went dead silent. Stephanie St. Clair, the only black woman in a room full of 12 white bankers, stood perfectly still as Thomas Dewberry, the bank's senior vice president, slid a single piece of paper across the mahogany table. "Miss St. Clair," Dewberry said, his voice dripping with condescension, "we've decided to reject your loan application. Furthermore, we're freezing all accounts associated with your businesses." The other bankers smirked. One of them, a red-faced man named Porter, actually laughed out loud. "Perhaps you should stick to what your people do best," Porter said, "cleaning our offices, not trying to run them." Stephanie picked up the rejection letter. She read it slowly, her face expressionless. Then she folded it carefully, placed it in her purse, and looked each banker directly in the eyes, one by one. "Gentlemen," she said quietly, "in 3 days you're going to regret this meeting more than anything you've ever done in your lives." She walked out. The bankers laughed harder. They had no idea that in 72 hours, Stephanie St. Clair would orchestrate the most devastating financial rebellion Harlem had ever seen. A rebellion that would cost those white bankers over $2 million in today's money and change the power dynamics of New York forever. To understand what happened in that boardroom and what Stephanie did next, you need to understand who she was in 1932. Stephanie St. Clair wasn't just another Harlem businesswoman, she was Queenie, Madam Queen, the woman who controlled the numbers racket in Harlem with an iron fist and a brilliant mind. Born in Martinique in 1897, Stephanie came to New York in 1912 with $10 in her pocket and fire in her heart. By 1932, she was running a numbers operation that pulled in $250,000 a year, equivalent to over $5 million today. But here's what made Stephanie different from every other numbers banker in New York. She didn't just take bets, she built a system. She hired runners, established collection points, created an accounting method so precise that not a single penny went missing. She paid her people well, protected them fiercely, and made sure the money stayed in Harlem. The white mob hated her for it. The police tried to arrest her constantly, and the white-owned banks, they despised her most of all because Stephanie St. Clair proved something they couldn't accept. A black woman could be smarter, richer, and more powerful than them. By early 1932, Stephanie had a problem. She needed to expand her operations, buy property, establish legitimate businesses to launder money. For that, she needed bank loans like any other business owner. She'd tried applying at 3 different banks over 6 months, each time rejected. Not because her financials were bad, they were immaculate, but because she was black, and because she was a woman. The final rejection came from Manhattan Savings and Trust, the biggest bank serving Harlem businesses. And unlike the other rejections, this one came with public humiliation. 3 weeks before that boardroom meeting, Stephanie had submitted a formal application for a $50,000 loan to purchase a building on 139th Street. Her credit was perfect. She'd provided tax returns, bank statements, 3 years of documented income. Everything by the book. The bank scheduled a meeting. Stephanie thought it was to finalize the loan. Instead, Thomas Dewberry and 11 other senior bankers were waiting for her. They didn't just reject her application. They put on a show. "We've been reviewing your file, Miss St. Clair," Dewberry had said, spreading her documents across the table like they were contaminated. "And frankly, we find the source of your income questionable." Stephanie kept her composure. "My tax returns show legitimate business income. I pay every dollar I owe to the federal government." Porter, the red-faced banker, interrupted. "Legitimate? You run an illegal gambling operation. Everyone knows it. The only reason you're not in jail is because you pay off the right cops." Another banker, a thin man named Morrison, added his venom. "Did you really think we'd give $50,000 to a colored woman running numbers? What kind of bank do you think we are?" Stephanie felt the rage building but kept her face neutral. The kind of bank that takes deposits from colored people every single day. The kind that charges us higher interest rates than white customers. The kind that profits from Harlem but refuses to invest in it. Dewberry stood up. "Miss St. Clair, let me be very clear. You will never get a loan from this bank. Not $50,000, not $5,000, not $50. And furthermore, effective immediately, we're freezing every account we suspect is connected to your operations." Stephanie's jaw tightened. "You can't do that. Those accounts belong to legitimate account holders. Account holders engaged in criminal enterprise, Morrison said smugly. We have every right to protect this institution from illegal money. That's when Porter delivered the final insult, the one that would cost them everything. Perhaps you should stick to what your people do best, cleaning our offices, not trying to run them. The room erupted in laughter. 12 white bankers laughing at a black woman they'd just financially attacked and publicly humiliated. Stephanie Saint. Claire stood up, picked up her documents and said those words that would become legendary. Gentlemen, in 3 days, you're going to regret this meeting more than anything you've ever done in your lives. She walked out. The bankers kept laughing. They had no idea what was coming. Stephanie walked 8 blocks to her office above a beauty salon on Lenox Avenue. Her hands were shaking, not from fear but from pure fury. She'd faced racism and sexism her entire life, but this was different. These men hadn't just rejected her. They'd frozen accounts belonging to dozens of Harlem residents, working people who'd saved their money, who'd trusted that bank. And they'd done it to send a message. Stay in your place. That night, Stephanie called an emergency meeting. She gathered her top lieutenants, 15 men and women who ran her numbers operation across Harlem. They think they can humiliate us, Stephanie said, pacing her office. They think they can take our money, freeze our accounts, and we'll just accept it because we're black. Her second-in-command, a man named Julius, who'd been with her since 1925, asked the obvious question. What do we do? We can't exactly sue them. Stephanie stopped pacing. A smile spread across her face, the kind of smile that meant someone was about to learn a very expensive lesson. We're going to do something better than sue them. We're going to bankrupt them. Here's what nobody understood about Manhattan Savings and Trust. Like most banks in that era, they operated on a fractional reserve system. They only kept about 10% of deposits in actual cash. The rest was loaned out or invested. The bank had approximately $2.8 million in deposits from Harlem residents, but only $280,000 in liquid cash on hand. If too many people tried to withdraw their money at once, the bank would collapse. It was called a bank run, and it was every banker's worst nightmare. Stephanie's plan was simple but devastating. She would convince every black depositor in Harlem to withdraw every single penny from Manhattan Savings and Trust on the same day. No violence, no threats, just legitimate customers exercising their legal right to access their money. But to pull it off, she needed to move fast and organize thousands of people in complete secrecy. Stephanie spent the next 48 hours in constant motion. She met with church leaders, promising donations to their congregations. She met with local business owners, explaining how the bank's racist policies affected everyone. She met with the heads of other numbers operations, even her competitors, and convinced them this was bigger than business rivalry. She sent her runners to every apartment building, every speakeasy, every barbershop and beauty salon in Harlem. The message was always the same. The bank humiliated Queenie. They froze accounts from working people. They said we're not good enough for loans, but good enough to take our deposits. On Friday, March 18th at 9 a.m., we take back our money. All of it. Stephanie knew human nature. She knew some people would be scared, worried about retaliation. So she made a promise. Anyone who withdraws their money and shows me the receipt gets a free numbers play for a month. Winners get paid double. It was brilliant. She turned a political protest into a financial incentive. By Thursday night, word had spread to over 3,000 account holders, but Stephanie needed to make sure the bank didn't catch wind of the plan. She sent a trusted associate, a woman named Lucille, to open a new account at Manhattan Savings and Trust that Thursday afternoon with a $500 deposit. Business as usual, nothing suspicious. The bankers had no idea what was coming. Friday, March 18th, 1932, 8:45 a.m. A line started forming outside Manhattan Savings and Trust's main Harlem branch on 125th Street. At first, just 20 people. By 8:55, it was 50. By 9 a.m., when the doors opened, over 200 people stood in line, and more were coming. The branch manager, a nervous man named Gilbert, immediately sensed something was wrong. "Why are so many people here?" he asked the first teller. "I don't know, sir. They all seem to be withdrawing money." The first customer was an elderly woman named Mrs. Patterson. She'd had an account at the bank for 12 years. "I'd like to withdraw my entire balance, please," she said politely. "All of it, Mrs. Patterson?" the teller asked, confused. "Every single penny." The teller processed the withdrawal. 247. Mrs. Patterson took her cash, walked out, and the next customer stepped forward. "I'd like to close my account and withdraw everything." Then the next. "Withdrawing my full balance." And the next. "Closing my account. I want cash." Within 30 minutes, the tellers realized what was happening. This wasn't random. This was organized. Gilbert called the main office in downtown Manhattan in a panic. "We have a situation. Hundreds of people are withdrawing their deposits. We're going to run out of cash." Thomas Dewberry, the same man who'd humiliated Stephanie 3 days earlier, took the call. "How much have we paid out?" 11,000 so far, and the line is getting longer. "Sir, they're all colored customers, every single one." Dewberry felt a chill run down his spine. He remembered Stephanie's words. "In 3 days, you're going to regret this meeting." "This is her," Dewberry said quietly. "This is Stephanie St. Clair." He immediately ordered cash transfers from other branches. By 10:30 a.m., they'd brought in an additional $50,000 in cash. It wouldn't be enough. By 11 a.m., over 800 people were in line. The bank had paid out $78,000. By noon, the cash reserves were down to $120,000, and there were still hundreds of people waiting. News reporters started showing up, drawn by the massive crowd. The Amsterdam News, Harlem's black newspaper, sent photographers. The images would be legendary. Hundreds of black men and women, dressed in their Sunday best, standing in dignified silence, waiting to withdraw their money. No shouting, no violence, just quiet, organized resistance. Inside the bank, chaos. Tellers were counting cash so fast their hands cramped. Gilbert was on the phone constantly, begging for more money to be transferred. And Dewberry, sitting in his downtown office, finally understood the magnitude of his mistake. By 2 p.m., the bank had paid out $180,000. They had $100,000 left in reserves, and the line hadn't shrunk. If anything, more people kept joining. Word had spread beyond Stephanie's original network. People who'd heard about the protest on the radio came to withdraw their money too. By 3 p.m., panic set in. The bank started stalling. "We're experiencing technical difficulties with our vault," they announced. "We'll need to verify some account information." But the people in line weren't stupid. They knew what was happening. The bank was running out of money. A man named Robert, a postal worker who'd saved $890 over 5 years, spoke up. "You had no problem taking my deposits every week. Now you have a problem giving my money back?" The crowd murmured in agreement. "We're not leaving until we get our money," shouted a woman named Dorothy. "Every single dollar." At 3:30 p.m., Dewberry made a desperate call to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. "We need an emergency cash infusion. We're facing a run." "How much do you need?" "At least 200,000, maybe more." "Mr. Dewberry, do you understand what you're asking? We'd need approval from—" "I don't care what you need. If we don't get that cash by closing, we'll have to shut our doors on Monday." The Federal Reserve agreed to an emergency transfer, but it would take until Monday to process. The bank would have to survive the weekend. At 4:45 p.m., 15 minutes before closing, the bank made an announcement. "Due to unprecedented demand, we will be limiting withdrawals to $100 per customer for the remainder of today. Full access will resume Monday." The crowd erupted. "That's our money. You can't do that." But legally, the bank could. It was in the fine print of every account agreement. In times of unusual circumstances, the bank could limit withdrawals. The people who'd already gotten their money left satisfied, but hundreds remained, angry and determined. Stephanie St. Clair, who'd been watching from across the street all day, smiled. She hadn't expected to bankrupt them in one day. This was just the beginning. That evening, Stephanie held another meeting. "They think limiting withdrawals will stop us. It won't. Monday morning, we do this again. And we keep doing it every single day until they're destroyed." Over the weekend, the story exploded. The Amsterdam News ran a front-page headline, "Harlem rises. Thousands demand their money as bank reveals racist policies." The white newspapers tried to spin it as angry mobs, but the photographs told a different story. Dignified, peaceful protest. On Monday, March 21st, the line outside Manhattan Savings and Trust was even longer. Over 1,200 people. The bank had received their emergency cash infusion, $250,000. But Dewberry knew it wouldn't last. The math was simple. The bank had approximately $2.8 million in deposits from Harlem customers. Even with withdrawal limits, if everyone pulled their money over the next 2 weeks, the bank would collapse. Dewberry called an emergency board meeting. "We need to address this before it destroys us." Morrison, the thin banker who'd participated in humiliating Stephanie, was defiant. "We can't let one colored woman dictate terms to this institution." But the bank's president, an older man named Harrington, was more pragmatic. "One colored woman has convinced thousands of customers to abandon us. Our stock price has dropped 18% since Friday. If this continues, we won't have an institution to dictate terms to." Porter, the red-faced banker, suggested violence. "We get the police to break up these lines, arrest the ringleaders." "On what charges?" Harrington asked. "Withdrawing their own money. The press would crucify us." Dewberry finally spoke. "There's only one way to stop this. We negotiate with Stephanie St. Clair." The room went silent. "Negotiate?" Morrison sputtered. "With her?" "Unless you have a better idea," Dewberry said coldly. "Yes, we negotiate." That Tuesday afternoon, Dewberry sent an intermediary to Stephanie's office, a black lawyer named Thompson who sometimes did work for the bank. "Miss St. Clair, Mr. Dewberry would like to meet with you, privately, to discuss a resolution." Stephanie leaned back in her chair. "Tell Mr. Dewberry if he wants to meet with me, he can come to Harlem, to my office, and he can come alone." The next day, Thomas Dewberry did something he never thought he'd do. He took a taxi to Lenox Avenue, climbed the stairs to a beauty salon, and knocked on Stephanie St. Clair's office door. She kept him waiting 20 minutes. When she finally let him in, she didn't offer him a seat. "Mr. Dewberry, I believe you said I should stick to cleaning offices." Dewberry's face flushed. "Miss St. Clair, I came to apologize for my colleagues' behavior and to find a path forward." "Your colleagues, you mean you?" "Yes, I was disrespectful and I was wrong." Stephanie sat down. "You weren't just disrespectful. You froze accounts belonging to working people to punish me. You used your power to hurt an entire community." "I understand that now, and I want to make it right." "Here's how you make it right," Stephanie said, pulling out a piece of paper. 1. You unfreeze every account you froze. 2. You issue a formal apology in the Amsterdam News. 3. You approve my loan application for $50,000. 4. You commit to processing loan applications from black customers using the same standards you use for white customers. 5. You donate $10,000 to Harlem community organizations. Dewberry's hands shook as he read the list. "This is substantial. So was your insult. So is the $200,000 my people have withdrawn. You can accept these terms, or by Friday, you'll have 0 deposits from Harlem. Your choice." Dewberry looked at her. In that moment, he saw what he should have seen in that boardroom: intelligence, strength, power that had nothing to do with the color of her skin and everything to do with the brilliance of her mind. "I accept your terms." "Good. My lawyer will draft the agreement. You'll sign it tomorrow, and Mr. Dewberry, if you ever disrespect me or anyone else from Harlem again, next time I won't stop at withdrawals. I'll make sure every black customer in New York knows what kind of bank you run. Understood?" Understood. The next day, Manhattan Savings and Trust issued a public apology in the Amsterdam News. They unfroze all accounts, they approved Stephanie's loan, and they quietly implemented new policies for minority customers. The bank run stopped immediately. People were satisfied. Justice had been served. But Stephanie St. Clair wasn't finished. She took that $50,000 loan and bought the building on 139th Street. Then she did something revolutionary. She opened her own financial institution, the Harlem Community Credit Union, a place where black customers could get loans without humiliation, where their money would be used to invest in their own community. Within 2 years, the credit union had over 5,000 members. Within 5 years, it had outgrown Manhattan Savings and Trust's Harlem operations. The story of Stephanie St. Clair's bank rebellion spread across the country. Black newspapers from Chicago to Los Angeles printed the story. It became a blueprint for economic resistance. In 1933, similar protests happened in Detroit. In 1934, in Philadelphia. Each time the lesson was the same. Economic power is real power, and when a community organizes, even the biggest institutions have to listen. Stephanie St. Clair lived until 1969. She saw the civil rights movement, saw the economic boycotts of the 1960s, saw black people using the exact tactics she'd pioneered in 1932. And every time someone asked her about that week in March when Harlem refused to pay a single dollar, she said the same thing. They thought they could humiliate me and I'd disappear. They forgot that my power didn't come from their approval. It came from my people, and you can't bankrupt what you can't control. Here's what most people miss about this story. Stephanie didn't win because she was violent. She didn't win because she threatened anyone. She won because she understood something those white bankers never learned. True power isn't about who has more money or bigger buildings or fancier titles. True power is about who can organize people around a common cause. It's about who can turn individual anger into collective action. It's about knowing that the system only works when people participate, and when they refuse, the whole thing collapses. Those 12 white bankers thought they were untouchable. They thought a black woman, no matter how smart or rich, couldn't challenge their institution. They learned the hard way that respect isn't given, it's demanded, and Stephanie St. Clair demanded hers.